Our reading this week is from Rays of the One Light, Weekly Commentaries on the Bible and Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. This week's reading is Reincarnation, the Spiral Staircase. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. In the book of Revelation, chapter 3, Jesus Christ tells us, "Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out." There is a difference between church dogmas, which are based on reasoned deductions from scriptural statements, and the pronouncements of wisdom, which are based on the inner realization of spiritual truths. Reason, like a train, can only follow already existing tracks of human experience. Human memory, being short, is seldom able to cross back over the threshold of a person's present existence. Biblical references to previous lifetimes on earth are overlooked in the deductive process, and we find them therefore excluded from the body of official dogma. Nevertheless, such references exist. The Bible itself presents them, as does Jesus in this passage, not as abstract teaching, but as direct personal perception of truth. In the same way, Krishna, in the Bhagavad Gita, silences Arjuna's reasonable doubts on the subject, not by reasoned argument, but by the frank statement contained in the 4th chapter of that great scripture. "Arjuna, you and I have passed through many births. I know all of them, though you, O chastiser of foes, recall them not." Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
I'm going to ask you to do a song just before her talk. This is a story by Paramahansa Yogananda that Swami Kriyananda put to music. It's called Jim Brown. Keep a level head, boys, and preach the lighter news. Don't disappoint the gentle folk. Our church needs better pews. Jim Brown was hired to clean the church. All week he kept it fair. That Sunday with his family he came to worship there. That Sunday with his family he came to worship there. Oh no, poor Jim, that may not be, for then there'd be a war. Our congregation are all white, and you know what you are. Our congregation are all white, and you know what you are. Back home, Jim Brown knelt by his bed and wept till eyes grew dim. That night his room became a shrine, for Jesus came to him. That night his room became a shrine, for Jesus came to him. He said, "My child, don't feel so sad. For 20 years I too have tried to enter that very church with no more luck than you. Have tried to enter that very church with no more luck than you. But keep a level head, boys, and preach the lighter news. Don't disappoint the gentle folk. Our church needs better pews."
Morning. I was reading up on the subject this morning, reincarnation, this weekend, and I came across that story that Paramahansa Yogananda, whose teachings we practice here, told in this context. Someone asked him about bigotry and segregation, and what did that mean karmically in terms of reincarnation? Would they need to reincarnate the next lifetime on the other end of that and be the recipient of that? And Yogananda answered yes. Everything has to balance out, all of our karma. In the Bible, they call it sowing and reaping, and in the East, it's called the law of karma, the law of cause and effect. It all has to balance out in the end to zero. And reflecting on that, I have a brother who lives in Holland. He's retired now, but he studied chemistry and mathematics, but he ended up with a career as a press officer in the Indian embassy in Holland. Don't ask me how, karma. But he's fascinated with this subject of zero, because he, has been studying that it originated out of India, which is also where Buddhism originated, and this whole concept of nothingness and nirvana. He doesn't look at it from necessarily a spiritual point of view at all. He's just fascinated by the power that zero has had in our culture and tradition and in all of life, and that its origins are in India. Well, it's no surprise that the origins of that concept come from the ancient rishis in India, because there's that understanding that everything the pendulum has to swing, and everything has to balance back to zero. I had a good friend at Ananda who a couple of decades ago now passed away fairly young. She was, I'm going to say, in her late 30s or very early 40s, and she had breast cancer, but she was one of those people, she said, I'm just not a chemo girl. And she faced her progress of the disease, and finally she was in the last few days of her life, and she was in a hospital in Nevada City, and I was up here, so I flew down to see her to say goodbye. And she was a very amazing person. At that point, she must have been 80 pounds. She had really lost a lot of weight, but she was so radiant and so joyful. And when I came in, she greeted me with just a lot of love. And she had a telephone on her bed with her, and she was in the process of calling people that she'd had difficulties with in her life. At that point, it was a person who, a woman who was the ex-wife of her current husband, and who apparently didn't like her very much. And she called her boldly, and she said, I just want you to know that I have no hard feelings, and I just love you with all my heart. And I could hear on the other end that person sobbing. But this friend, she was trying to just balance out, just send light and love and positive energy to every dark corner that may have existed in her life. She understood that process. She was, leaving this body in the highest possible way. Swami Kriyananda wrote a paper called The Final Exam, in which he talks about when we are leaving the body, or we are with someone else who's leaving the body, to try to help them keep their consciousness uplifted, and also to let go of the pains and the hurts of this lifetime, and to try to balance it out by actually putting out positive energies in those directions, which is exactly what she was doing, and she was doing it long before he wrote that paper. She just knew it intuitively, instinctively. Well, the purpose of reincarnation is to help us to neutralize all of the likes and dislikes, neutralize and balance out all of those karmas. And that takes time. And then also just through meditation and contact with the divine that is within us, to live in the higher realms, in the higher states of awareness within our own being, and in that way to merge into God realization, into self-realization. And so that's the purpose behind it. But it takes time, and when the winds of karma are blowing all around us like they are all the time, but right now intensely with terrorism and dictatorships, brutal dictatorships, and all the issues the world is dealing with trying to extend a hand to the refugees and so on. Compassion and kindness and these higher qualities, this is the call of the moment. And yet I found myself the other day in a situation out in a public place where I was hearing people talk with great fear. I could tell there was fear in their hearts, but it was showing itself as anger and frustration and wanting to shut the borders and keep the people out and so on. And I could feel that fear, and there was a part of me that just wanted to sort of shake them, wake up. And then I realized that doesn't work. That's not, you don't shake fear and anger, these kinds of emotions. The only way to work with it is through kindness and love and compassion in our own being, and that vibration cumulatively will have its effect if we act. And that's the other aspect of karma, is we have to act. As the Bhagavad Gita says, we can't get into that perfect balanced place through inaction. We're compelled to act. So if we must act, let's act rightly. Let's act in that consciousness of love and of compassion. I was thinking about the subject of reincarnation, and what comes to mind is the déjà vu that all of us, I'm sure, have had some experience of. That's the person that you just know that you know from somewhere, or the situation or the place, and you just have a sense of, I've been there before. And I remember when I was just 18 years old, before I got on this path, I had gone to Europe for a 4-month journey. I'm originally from Holland. So I went to Holland, I bought a little car, and my childhood friend and I hopped in the car and we went traveling all through Europe for 4 months. And when we got to Florence, Italy, I remember we had the address of the youth hostel we were going to. And I got into that city and I just instantly knew my way around. I didn't even need the directions. I just needed the street address, and I just found my way there. And it's a very complicated city, but I just felt like I had been there many times, and I didn't believe in reincarnation then. I didn't even know about it. That thought never entered my mind. But it was a perfectly natural thought nevertheless. Oh, I've been here many times. And so that's how it is. It just simply is. But for that reason, karma, the law of cause and effect, requires, the other half of it is reincarnation, or else it simply doesn't work. We have millions of desires. You sit and try to meditate for an hour, and how many hundreds of thousands of thoughts go through our mind, even when we're trying to stop it and trying to keep it still, what to speak of when we let it just go in abundance as it pleases. Thousands, millions, the teachings tell us, of lifetimes does it take to be able to, see, there's two aspects to karma. One is that we have to fulfill all those desires one way or another. And the other is that it all has to balance out to zero. So if we, have a, let's say like the opening song, we have a bigotry or a hatred for a certain kind of person, we have to, at some point, experience being the recipient of that hatred and that circumstance. All of that stuff takes time, and that's why it takes millions of lifetimes to try to work it out in the natural way. But like I said, we have to act. Luther Burbank was a great botanist and a mystic, and Paramahansa Yogananda dedicated his autobiography of a yogi to him, and he called him a great Western saint. Well, in his botany, he said he had to do fearlessly thousands of experiments, just boldly act and move through, test your own, first assumptions, constantly test. Don't just accept belief, experience belief directly. And he did that not just in his botany, but he did it in his spiritual life as well. He just had to know for himself. And that's the consciousness of most people today in the West. We're experimenters, we're scientists. We have to know for ourselves. You see, in meditation, Yogananda used to describe meditation as being like the microscope. We know that we're made up of molecules. We can't see the molecules with our naked eye. Doesn't mean they don't exist. When we look through the microscope, we can see the molecules. And meditation is like the microscope. It's a tool. It's a technique that allows us to see and experience God for ourselves inside. We can't say God doesn't exist until we're willing to experiment, to see if we can have that experience ourselves. And Yogananda came to the West in great part, to show us all the techniques and the ways to have that direct experience for ourselves. There's another aspect to it, which is you can't pour old wine into new skin. So there's a reason why we don't remember our past lives. We've done everything, the scriptures say. We've been everything. We've been the pirate. We've been the criminal. And we've been the priest and the holy person. We've been it all. And so the memories of all of that, it's sort of like, I see this more than anything when people come to me for counsel. Most of the time, they're stuck in mistakes that they made before, patterns that they had before. And you sort of want to wake up fresh and start new. I learned that so many times through the years from Swami Kriyananda, Ananda's founder, that something would not be going quite right in a certain department or a certain direction that was happening. And instead of trying to just fix it, like a mechanic or something, he would just completely change the energy and start something new. Put a new person to the task or put a new situation in the place. And in that way, you just get a fresh start. And you don't have to be stuck, trying to, you know how they say when you remodel a house, it's so much more expensive than just building one from scratch that's new, because one thing you fix leads to another. So it's not that you want to just become a society that throws everything away, but the point is in our consciousness, we get a clear slate. We get a fresh start. We work with that new energy that we've developed, let's say, in our meditation. And we don't go back and concentrate on those mistakes. Yogananda said you can't beat at darkness with a stick. You just simply turn on the light, and the darkness will disappear as though it has never been. So it's about turning on the light. And all of the meditation techniques have us concentrate at the point between the eyebrows. Have us concentrate up here on the light. That's where we keep our attention. That's how we communicate with one another. And so it's not just a lifetime even, it's each and every day. My sweet husband, he knew what the topic was today, and that when the alarm went off this morning, and he says, "Here we go again." And I'm here to talk about, no, we don't go there again. We're getting out of here. We're getting out in this lifetime. That's what Yogananda promised. If we just put one step in front of the other towards the light, towards spirit, towards compassion, towards kindness. In this way, it's not just even with the day, it's with the breath. We exhale the toxins, we inhale the prana, the fresh new life. Let's live in that inhalation.
Read them whispered from eternity again. Teach me, Lord, to conquer myself by myself. Bless me that my discrimination become the charioteer of the steeds of my five senses, firmly holding the reins of my mind. Let my soul, riding on the wheels of discipline in the little chariot of my body, drive triumphantly over the speedway of earth lives, until on the last lap of the last race it finds itself safe, O King of Kings, in thy vast royal palace.